Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television here on Channel 1. On The Point of View, pick the right topics, get the right guests, and ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. It's crunch time for the Galamsey advocacy. Organized labor, civil society have asked the government to take action before end of September. Today is the 30th of September, so I've invited one of the leading figures in the advocacy against irresponsible illegal mining to walk us through a recent history of this struggle and also to paint the legal scenarios that are available in dealing with this seemingly intractable problem. We'll be right back with my guest. Stay with us. Welcome back. Later tonight, we'll speak to a canon of the Anglican Church on what Christians' response should be to environmental degradation in the Galamsey fight, but that's in the last part. For the first part, my guest is Ankomah, who's, you can call him the convener of Occupy Ghana, a pressure group that has been at this for at least 6-7 years, and he's also a lawyer. Ace, welcome to the show. Good evening.
Good evening.
So how long has OG been in this Galamsey pit?
Occupy Ghana were formed in late 2014.
Okay.
In 2016, I mean, we're basically rebels looking for a cause, you know, so we identified Auditor General, we went after it. And one of the things we identified sometime in 2016 was the Galamsey issue. And so in 2016, we sent, I think, 2 engineers, 2 or 3 people to live in the Takwa environs for about 2 weeks. And they came back with a report that shocked us. And so we started the advocacy really from 2017. After we had studied the report, checked it, gone back, spoken with people, then we concluded that we need to take a position that it must end. Because the report they brought was, look, there's a Galamsey economy. There are 3 levels. There's the kingpin, the middlemen, and the working men. If you get the working men, you're wrong. You don't get all of them. And there's a whole economy, and there are people who depend on it. There's the medical bit of it. They are seeing indications of deformed children and everything. So it was a very comprehensive report. We sat down, we went through it, and then in fact, we had internal arguments whether or not we were going to take the fight up, because some didn't think that it was a fight worth having. But we debated it for months, and we finally concluded that we're going to come up to say that we need to stop it. And so in 2017, we issued our first.
Do you remember the first statement and what you were asking for?
Yes, as I said, I brought you quite a bit.
Oh, you brought everything?
I brought you everything.
So your first statement on illegal
I think our first was,
or mining, what did you call it at the time?
It was 30th March 2017.
30th March 2017.
We declared a red April against Galamsey. So we said March 2017, we said people should wear red in protest of Galamsey.
So just a month and a half into the new government?
Yes. Right, we are right from when the new government started.
It'd be nice to hear some of the things you said in that.
We said that the Occupy Ghana has studied the Galamsey phenomenon from all possible angles, social, economic, medical, legal, etc., and has concluded that there is and can be no conceivable justification for illegal mining to persist in Ghana. Occupy Ghana therefore calls on the government to take imminent steps to, and this is the 4 things recommended in March 2017. 1, stop, prevent, and then regulate all currently unlicensed and unregulated mining. 2, explore the provision of gainful alternative employment to persons engaged in Galamsey. 3, support mass education on the Galamsey menace, particularly through local civil society. And 4, be mindful of the potential national security threat that Galamsey poses. These were the 4 things we put out in March 2017, more than 7.5 years ago.
I remember when we started that fight in 2016, 2017, so the main thing we noticed was the larger vehicles and the trucks. Because initially, Galamsey was something people were doing with very basic things.
Yeah, pickaxe.
So I don't know if you recognize that at the time, the issue of excavators and the chunk funds.
It was growing. Look, I mean, historically, we've always mined, right? When Diego de Zambuja arrived in Elmina in 1482, he saw so much gold. Right? Well, what we call Elmina was the time called Anomasa or anumansa, right? An inexhaustible drink. But they saw gold. So we're mining gold. Then when colonialism started, Bernard, the colonial authority schemed to keep us out of mining. For example, in one of the colonial ordinances, you couldn't mine gold unless you could read the ordinance in English.
Wow. Serious?
Yes. The ordinance said you will not be allowed to mine gold unless you can read the mining law. And you need a certain amount of money. Now, what that did was to push all the local people aside and immediately rendered their gold mining illegal. And it became something for the big business, and it wasn't big Ghanaian business. Because no individual Ghanaian or the Gold Coast at the time had the money to meet those standards. So it became something, the big mining was reserved for foreign interests.
Wow.
That is why if you track it, apart from the state, almost every gold mining interest was foreign owned and foreign controlled. So this went on for a while till we realized, and so while that was happening, the locals were still mining. At some point, we started licensing the locals to mine tailings. So when the big boys have mined and have left what they can't mine, then the local guys will go in and try and see what gold they can get from the tailings. And so even the evolution of the law has recognized, and finally we said, let's allow small-scale artisanal mining.
Which law would you say, because from what I'd read, it appears it was the Act 703 that sort of tried to put some structure around small-scale mining, which is 2006. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Is that correct?
You're not particularly wrong, but we have to go back to 1986.
1986.
That was when we did the first, and what I call the reluctant recognition of small-scale mining. And so in 1986, we passed a law which was unsatisfactory in many regards, but it was the first recognition of artisanal mining, then called small-scale mining. So it was roping in traditional mining methods, etc., etc. But you're right, in 2006, 20 years later, we passed what I believe is the most forward-looking minerals and mining act probably in the world, which recognized artisanal mining, put in place structures. The structures are amazing. And it shows how Ghana is great at dreaming up dreams, but then completely messing up when it comes to the implementation of the dreams. The 2009 Act, it recognizes that you have to use, for example, mercury. It says the circumstances under which you'll be allowed to use mercury. Artisanal or small-scale mining was limited to Ghanaians. So if you're not Ghanaian and you want to get into mining, you are going to go through the big scale where you have to do reconnaissance license, get prospecting license before you get a mining lease. If I'm a Ghanaian, I just have to show that there's gold in the land. And if I can comply with the environmental standards, I'm given a license to do what is called small-scale mining. I don't have to go through reconnaissance prospecting before I mine. And so we put in place an easier system for the Ghanaian to also participate in the gold. Bernard, let me make a statement. Poverty and gold cannot exist in the same environment peacefully. The environment will suffer. The environment will lose. But because Mother Nature won't lose, ultimately Mother Nature will bite us. Right? And so what has happened is that people have, it was probably poverty, but now big money has come into it. And if you look at the machines they're using, this is not money that the local boys and local
Which
girls,
is actually what I wanted to ask. Does the law clearly delineate and differentiate small-scale mining from traditional large-scale mining? Is there a space for something like medium scale? I ask this because, again, traditionally when we say small-scale mining, to my mind, people will go into abandoned pits and then some will work with their fingers or use basic equipment. So, for example, when somebody uses an excavator to go and try and do mining, is he a small-scale miner, a medium-scale miner, or a large-scale miner?
Now, the first definition of small-scale mining in 1986 was that mining was defined as mining, quote, by methods not involving substantial expenditure or the use of specialized technology. That was the original definition in 1986. And that is the thinking that has gone into it. So once you're getting into large-scale mining, something that is large is not, obviously, it's not small. And so, of course, you can graduate from the small-scale mining scenario into the mining lease scenario. But you're first going to have to do the reconnaissance. You know, you have to do the geophysics, geochemistry, prospecting, show that there's substantial gold, commercial gold, and then you get a mining lease.
So when it's a lease and there's reconnaissance and there's prospecting, it's assumed it's large scale.
Large scale. The large scale go through reconnaissance, prospecting, and finally mining lease.
Because later on in the discussion, we will talk about Kunta, where a company that is supposed to be doing reconnaissance or whatever you call it, prospecting, was alleged to have been involved in mining.
But we don't have to wait. You can't mine with a reconnaissance license or prospecting license. It's a crime. In Ghana, you can only start mining if you have the mining lease or a small-scale mining license. So the fact that you've been given a prospecting license does not mean you can mine. No, in fact, as for a reconnaissance license, you are not even allowed to go onto the land. You're supposed to do reconnaissance work. They fly planes and everything. When you have proven that there's something to be shown for it, then you move to the next stage of license, prospecting. That you only go and dig to test. What they call it geophysics, geochemistry. They do the virtual imaging, and you test to see whether there's some commercial find. When you have justified your prospecting license, then the Minerals Commission will give you the mining lease. This is when you can now go and start hacking the ground for gold. So if a company, by whatever name, only has a prospecting license, it is a crime for that company to be mining gold.
Fair enough. Let's come back to the history. So 86 law is pretty clear, much better than the colonial law.
Absolutely.
Then there's Act 703.
Yes, 703 is what came.
Which you say was a very nice law.
Absolutely.
Forward-looking, recognizes the differences. In 2015, there was an amendment.
Yes.
Act 900.
Yes. The amendments came in when the Galamsey fight started. Then we all started making the noise. And so the government thought to tighten the regulations on small-scale mining.
All right.
Re-emphasizing that it's only Ghanaians and enhancing the punishments for non-Ghanaians doing small-scale mining and anybody doing small-scale mining without a license. So it is a very good, very forward-looking. It enhanced the punishments, and then we are unable to enforce the punishments.
And then, so was there a significant between 2019 Act 995 and 2015 Act 900?
Yeah, it was an enhancement of the regime.
All as we went along. So I'm sure the Aisha One issue helped in the 2019 amendment, possibly.
Yeah, we see the problems and then we deal with it. On that, Ghana does quite well. As for passing the law, we'll pass it. When the enforcement, that's a problem.
All right, so let's go back to the problem. So even with Act 703, the DCEs, the assemblies, and the structure is well organized enough that if anybody wants to regulate any scale of mining, they should be able to do it.
Absolutely. And when I talk about Act 703, I speak about Act 703 as amended.
Of course.
I'm not even
that
going to
includes,
break it.
Yes.
Act 703, if you look at it now, it is forward-looking. It says that, it has a whole chapter for regulating artisanal mining. First, the minister designates an area, and then through Minerals Commission, grants licenses with necessary conditions. If you mine outside the area, it is an offense. Only Ghanaians of 18 years and above may engage in what we call small-scale mining or even provide related mining services. There's a term for the license, maximum 5-year term. It is renewable. The minister can revoke it for specified reasons. That is why I'm telling those calling for the ban to be very careful, because you must give me the reason, my breach, which is leading to the revocation, right? If the license can't even be transferred without the minister's approval, the law demands that Minerals Commission sets up district offices headed by a district officer to register mines, supervise and monitor mining operations, provide advice, training, etc., etc. There's supposed to be a small-scale mining committee, right? Composed by the DCE, the district officer, nominees of the district assembly, traditional council, inspectorate division of the Minerals Commission, and most importantly, the Environmental Protection Agency. And there are rules and regulations like they are to mine to win. They are to win, mine, and produce through effective and efficient methods, observe good mining practices, health and safety rules, pay due regard to the protection of the environment. There's a strict regulation on even the use of explosives and mercury. And the minister is to make further rules to guide these things. Everything that we need on paper to ensure that we can have sensible, forward-looking, small-scale mining exists.
If the law is well written and clear, and yet the way the mining is done is destructive, it's a question of implementing the law.
It's implementing the law. And maybe we should ask ourselves whether the Minerals Commission has the wherewithal to look at all of this. Look, we can send the soldiers to go and stop it. I don't think we have enough soldiers considering the scale of it.
You think so?
Look, in 2013, the then Lands Minister, Inisa Fuseni, right, said on an interview that by his reckoning, there were 2 million people involved in it. This 2013. He kind of waffled between 2 million and 1 million. Good. And that's 2013. 10 years down the line, can we guess how many people are involved in and how widespread it is? Recently, the Ghana Institute of Surveyors told the government that they have the means to show them where every Galamsey operation is. We have to unleash our entire military to go into the forest and sit in the forest to stop
But are they all mining at the same time?
That's the point.
The point could be they could be involved, but because I don't know if there's enough capital to be allowing for mining concurrently in all those places.
The thing about small-scale mining, especially the Galamsey kind, is that they are very footloose. They can move very quickly. Look, we heard it from the sources. By the time the soldiers get there, there's nobody there. I hear the funniest one was the place they call Overseas, which is like a junction between Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina, and Ghana. By the time the Ghana soldiers go there, they've all withdrawn. They're standing across the border looking at the soldiers.
It's like, we are not from here.
How long will you stay? You will go, and they'll return. So it exists. But I think that the Minerals Commission, look, this is a national emergency. What stops the government from saying that we need to produce mining engineers, more mining engineers from Takwa, who know everything about small-scale mining and the rules and regulations? They learn it. It's part of the course. And they will be hired by the Minerals Commission to supervise the mines.
Because there are probably more people mining than supervisors available.
Good. But we can create it. We can say that because of that, for the next 5 years, we are training 600 mining engineers every year because we think there's work. Gold is money. We can get the taxes. We can pay them well. We can do the rules. You finish mining. We have taken enough money from you to do for reclamation and everything. We know which officer is in charge of what, so that if there's a breach, we know who to hold responsible. We have the means. The School of Mines exists. We can equip it. We can send young men and young women to train, and in 4 years, they'll be ready to be deployed. We've been making this noise for 7 years.
But this is possibly a medium to long-term solution, because I think that the issue of a drastic action that needs to be taken is critical.
Absolutely.
The 52 statements or so have come. Over 90% of them has asked for state of emergency. The first group that introduced that expression in the Galamsey conversation, as far as I know, was Occupy Ghana.
Yes.
When did you first ask for state of emergency, and why?
I think the state of emergency came up in October 2022, when now we saw that the government, which had tried to fix it, was no longer interested in fixing it. And we could see that it was extending. It was going to be more difficult to stop than when we started the advocacy. And so we said, let's have a targeted state of emergency at the mining areas where this is taking care of. It's just going to let's stop the bleeding first. When we have stopped it, let's implement the law. So we can say, stop it first, declare a state of emergency. If they won't do it, confiscate all lands that are used for Galamsey. We need some drastic action. First, to send a message and to stop the bleeding. When we stop the bleeding, we can now fix the bones, we can put the POP on it, and make sure that everything is right. But as you can see, at the time, nobody was interested in it.
What was the basis for state of emergency? And I guess it wasn't national. You were saying they should declare state of emergency in specific places. How was that going to work? Because I recall the minister recently say that a state of emergency is draconian, and that he did not think that that was the way to go readily. Of course. So when you say state of emergency is declared in a place, because I think even in your statement, you also made reference to Parliament. Because at the time you made that call, Parliament was on recess. So can you explain that thing to us properly?
If you look at the state of emergency provisions, I believe in Article 31, it doesn't have to be in respect of the entire country.
Good.
It is a situation where some, should I say, rights may be suspended, like we're all kept in our rooms because of COVID. And when there's a war or disturbance in some part of Ghana, the president is able to declare a state of emergency for the town and say that because of that, we've imposed a curfew. Everybody should sleep at 6. It doesn't apply to the next town, just that town. So we're saying, let's identify the mining areas. The government in power, you know the mining areas. You claim you lost 5 seats. You know where they are. impose a state of emergency, targeted. Let's say, look, we want, and to give so let's say a curfew is imposed 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. so that the military have the chance to go in, see where these things are happening. We map the areas to get a grasp of the situation first. And you see, the thing about state of emergency is that if the president declares it, it must go to Parliament for Parliament to renew. So when they declare some of the state of emergency, like is it Boku, they got to go back to Parliament. Then Parliament, as guardians, get to check the government, so the government is not misusing the state of emergency. So we said the president should do that for the mining areas first. Then we go to Parliament. Look, every suggestion has been. We even said, look, there are district chief executives in all of these mining areas. They have DISEC. They're telling us they don't know what is going on. What if the president said that if you're a district chief executive and there's illegal mining in your area, you lose your job? So we've suggested several things. Look, for example, we said freeze or confiscate lands. Currently, if you facilitate a crime, the law allows, will actually charge you with abetment of crime. If somebody's going to kill and I give a car to drive to go kill.
You have facilitated a crime.
I've facilitated a crime. It's called abetment of crime. So if somebody's going to engage in the offense of Galamsey and I give my land to the person, I've clearly facilitated it. So I said that we could actually arrest the landowners who take money as facilitating the offense. But there's even more. When you look at our laws on organized crime and money laundering, and this is clearly now organized crime levels, right? It says that if there's tainted property, the tainted property can be confiscated. And indeed, under the Minerals and Mining Act, when they arrest the miners, the assets, the movables they are using should be seized, and when they are convicted, it is to be given to the state. So there's already a confiscation regime. Can we just insert 2 words in the law which applies to the land? So that if your land is being used for Galamsey, the government is going to confiscate it. The burden is upon you to show that you did not approve of it, and that when they went onto your land, you made at least 2 reports to the police, and the police didn't act. But when people don't want to listen, it doesn't matter what you say.
Point of view tonight is taking a legal view on the fight against irresponsible, illegal mining. My guest is Ankomah, convener of Occupy Ghana. When we come back, we'll tackle 2 key issues. The Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences proposed what they call a revocation of licenses based on some forensic audit. And they also appealed to the Speaker of Parliament to assist to revoke LI 2462. We'll look at what is wrong with the LI and whether this approach of revoking licenses and leases in forest reserves would be the way to go. Stay with us. Welcome back. The point of view tonight is taking first a recent historical view and also a legal view of Galamsey with Ankomah of Occupy Ghana. Later we speak to a minister of the gospel to discuss what Christians must do in the face of wanton destruction of the environment. So one of the documents I've shared with my viewers has been the December 2023 16-page press statement issued by the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. And they said a couple of things. So they are asking for the revocation of LI 2462. I think they were the first group to do this. They petitioned the Speaker in July to actually aid the revocation. What do you make of LI 2462? What's your reflection on how it even came to be? Because our understanding of that, this LI, which basically allows mining in forest reserves, should never have even been passed.
Yeah, so being a member of the Academy, I'm sure you can see my handwriting somewhere along the line. But and also being an officer of the court, I got to be very careful because there's currently legal action
by the environmental groups on this.
But that's the background. And so the role of the Environmental Protection Agency in mining is that in the course of the licensing, they are supposed to vet the operations to ensure that the operations are in line with it. And so the Minerals Commission is supposed to have control of, even if you're going to go into a forest area, right? We have, for example, said with the Media Coalition that we don't agree with mining in the forest area. The minister's pushback is that, well, if you guys say that, then we can't have any mining at all. But can we do that and still regulate what happens in the forest? Then this LI pops up, right? Now we must understand legislative instruments. Legislative instruments aren't made by Parliament.
So what are they called legislative instruments?
I'll explain. When a legislation vests a power in a ministerial body or other authority to regulate a sector, that regulatory power is exercised by what is called a legislative instrument, because it's a piece of legislation that vested that power in you. So what happens is that the person with the delegated power then prepares the draft regulations, takes it to Parliament. It goes before the committee. They go back and forth. Then the Constitution says Parliament can't amend it. They can only revoke it.
So you take it as is.
And it's a supermajority revocation. It's one of the interesting inbuilt separation of powers protections, so that these regulatory authorities can regulate their sectors without an unnecessary overbearing parliamentary lean on. So Parliament itself ought to be very careful
when considering allies.
When it is donating these powers to make regulations, because it can come back to hurt them. And if they don't summon the power to revoke the draft, after 21 days of being laid before Parliament, it becomes a legislative instrument. And so the question we ask is, did Parliament really take its time to go through this? Because this purports to be new rules governing mining in forests. But there are many questions that are being asked as to the real source of the authority to make the legislative instrument, right? And so the Academy was, no, let's revoke this, because we suspect that it is just going to be used as the cover to license all kinds of mining in forests. Because now, basically, the president can decide it, if you look at the LI.
So let me get this straight. There was a role of the EPA in regulating mining.
Yes.
And they wanted to strengthen that role.
If you look at it, it's an attempt to strengthen the role.
And yet, in a way, they then now smuggled a licensing regime for mining in forest reserves. So in the LI, who's the regulator? Is it the Forestry Commission, the EPA,
that's part of Constitution. Is it
Minerals Commission?
Is it Forestry Commission? Well, Minerals Commission has, I don't see from what I remember of the LI, I don't even see its real role in it. So Minerals Commission is still doing its licensing. But now, between Forestry Commission and EPA, this LI has come out. I'm now being very careful in going into details because the matter is sub judice. But there are, let's say that the Academy and all of us found problems with the LI.
Let me just read what the Academy said. The Academy says that they find the enactment of LI 2462 not simply a troubling contradiction. By the way, this was written before the case.
Before the case, yes.
So this is
December 20, so you can read it, December 2023.
But a completely tone-deaf response to the problem of illegal mining.
Absolutely.
It beggars belief that when we have proven to be so incapable of regulating illegal mining in open places, the Minister of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation and the board of the EPA, without the necessary stakeholder consultation, would send subsidiary legislation to Parliament in 2022 to license mining in our already fragile forest reserves. It's even more shocking that Parliament dropped the ball by allowing the LI to gestate without annulling it under its Article 11.7 powers. So you are saying on the face of it, this was a terrible LI.
The Ghana Academy certainly thinks so, and we stand by that position.
But now that it's in court, is it in the bosom of the Speaker? Because in July this year, they wrote to the Speaker and gave a dossier on how they thought the Speaker should go about the revocation.
To revoke it.
So now that it's in court, which one has?
Well,
which one are we working with?
The Parliament can still do what it wants to do, if they want to do it.
So you're saying that the two arms of government can work independently?
We don't have to wait for the case to resolve. The court is going to determine whether the LI and the circumstances of this enactment and its contents are legal or comport with the law. The Parliament can sit and say, you know what, we don't even want to wait for the courts to do this. We concede that we are wrong. We have revoked it.
The Parliament can do this?
Absolutely doable. Absolutely doable. It's not contempt of court.
Wow.
I mean, look, if you sue me that I am violating your right to have a peaceful sleep in your house by playing music behind your wall, and I look at it and say, I think he's right.
I don't even play the music.
I don't play the music anymore.
I can't wait for...
You see, but can we trust Parliament? That's what I would also want to say. Bernard, In 2020, we discovered that all small-scale mining licenses didn't have parliamentary approval. Now, the architects of our constitutional structure designed that every mineral right should go to Parliament for approval. When we think, we can say it was a wise and sensible choice. So that when it goes in there, the MP for the area will see that, well, they're going to give a mining lease to XYZ company. Is it in the best interest of my community? The MP may have to go back, talk with the community, the chiefs and everybody to get their buy-in, so Parliament will decide whether or not to ratify the licenses. So we came up with this, we discovered that they were all unlicensed, they were all unconstitutional. The Minerals Commission admitted it. So we're getting ready to go to court. Now, going to court is not an easy thing because you need the evidence, you need the filing and everything. And this dovetailed into the elections. You know the next thing we realized? Parliament had ratified all of them. Parliament ratified all of them before the elections. So we had sounded the alarm. We had told Parliament that all of these licenses are coming to you. We expect a closer scrutiny of them. Nothing happened. They just approved.
When the government did this on the call for state of emergency, they've dealt with that. When people say they want a moratorium, there's also been some pushback on this. Between a suspension, an outright ban, and all of that on that scale, what are your thoughts around what is legally feasible?
It's a difficult question, I must admit. Because when you give someone the mining lease or the small-scale mining license, it is for a certain term. You say that you have the power to revoke it specifically upon the breach of the rules. So I am mining. I haven't breached the law. He or she is breaching the law. And actually, sometimes coming into my mine, my concession to mine, they say, ban all of us. You see,
so ban is big. But what if you say moratorium? So moratorium means put it on hold for a while?
Yes.
Is that not what it means?
A moratorium may have to involve some level of engagement.
Okay.
But why are you going to tell the big mines who haven't breached any of the laws that stop for moratorium? Yeah, we agree, moratorium. How long? There's a financial cost, not just to them, but to the nation.
No, but I say moratorium on mining near water bodies in forest reserves.
No, that one is even a strong. Yeah, no, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
That's the original statement.
So to qualify, it's a moratorium for mining in specific places.
Areas. Yes. As for that one, it's illegal. The law says you can't mine at certain places, and to the extent that they've given leases into forest bodies, we're asking that put that on hold.
So let me declare, you are saying you can declare moratorium on mining near water bodies and then in forest reserves because you think the LI is wrong.
Yeah.
And then you can allow those who are mining regularly in legally non-affected places to go on. That is your first legal challenge.
That's the first legal challenge. And so you can see that there's a bit of some of the calls are for outright ban. Now that
on all mining in all places, which may not be feasible.
No, absolutely not.
So if the government comes to say all mining in water bodies, is there a distance we will use? Close to?
There is.
What distance can we use?
There's
a law already on this.
There's a law already on this that you can't mine within a certain zone of the water body. But you see, this is the issue. Bernard, mining is not pretty. It's not pretty anywhere. Mining, when you see it, looks like savaging the earth.
Yeah.
I compare it to killing a goat.
Yeah.
If you're only used to buying the goat in the shop, you don't know what the goat means, you don't know what it entails.
Yeah.
The first day you see the bleating goat being beheaded and its intestines opened, it's quite a gory thing. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you get a goat meat. Yeah. So mining isn't pretty. To the extent that the mine is operating legally, I don't think that we should be talking about them at all. Listen, if a duly licensed or a leaseholder is breaching the law, we identify that leaseholder and deal with that leaseholder or that license holder. The illegal part, we should merely do the moratorium. That one I agree. And you know, there's law that regulates how close you can go to the water body. But listen, a lot of the mines require the water to wash the gold out. And so you don't believe the level of detail that the Minerals Commission have. The circumstances under which you can channel water from the main body, trap the water, and use it. And then you'll be required to go through the purification process when you are done, before the water is let back into the scenario. If we want to, into the water body, if we want to do this, we can do it.
Wow. So the calls for moratorium for mining near water bodies,
forest areas,
depths,
I support that.
Revocation of LI 2462, 100%.
I go with that.
Finally, how many of the statements have you made? Do you have a number? I want you to give them to me. How many statements have you made since?
It's difficult to count because in 2022 alone, we wrote to the president every week for 8 weeks.
Wow. So just 2022, 8 weeks before you had, wow. So that's
only 2022. We wrote to the president every week.
For 8 weeks.
For 8 weeks. We said to him, look, so on 10 September, we repeated, that's recently, 10 September 2024, we repeated our call. But let's start from 28 September 2022. We wrote an open letter to the president saying that this Galamsey thing is a problem. Put your foot down. 3rd October, we wrote reminder 1.
Wow.
Which is the one that asked that they declare the state of emergency. 10th October, the next week, we wrote reminder 2, pointing out the imminent ecological and food disaster. 17th October, the next week, we wrote reminder 3. That's why we advocated for confiscating Galamsey lands. 24th October, we wrote reminder 4, in which we specifically asked the government to take action on their contaminating issue.
Wow.
We were specific. No response, no action. 31st October, reminder 5, which we call the reminder of reminders.
Reminder of reminders.
Reminder of reminders.
Wow.
No response. 7.
The imminent health disaster.
That's 7th November. Number 6, imminent health disaster. Where we pointed to what we had seen about deformed children and everything. No response.
Charity begins at home.
The last one is charity begins
November
at home.
16.
November 16. They didn't respond. So our last one is we repeated our call to halt it, which is just 10 September this year. This is just our engagement with the presidency.
Wow.
There's no acknowledgement of receipts and there's no action.
Well, organized labor will meet tomorrow and we'll know what they will do by the end of the month.
We welcome it. But Bernard, this has taken maybe too long. We like the fact that now there seems to be unity of purpose and everybody is speaking about it. But sometimes we rule the fact that we were ignored all of these years.
It's part of the momentum.
Yes. So now it's probably not too late. But you know what I think? We've lost the war.
You think so?
We've lost it. The only good news is that we lost it to ourselves.
So we can
we can sit but we've lost it. Some of the pictures we are seeing are horrendous. They were not that state when we first went to the Takwa area in 2016.
It's gotten worse.
Not even in 2022. Because if you show that you can't regulate, everybody will dig in. And so now the kingpins are not only local people. They are foreigners who have come in with money. It's free for all. We have opened the nation free for all. Look, the chamfangs and the excavators, please, are they dropped by air, by parachute? They ship them through our harbors. So if we want to know who brought which, we know. But we won't do anything.
Thank you, Ace. We'll come back and talk to a man of God about what Christians can do about Galamsey and the environment. He's called Reverend Emmanuel Kwesi. He's written a nice book on the role of the church. Ace, can I have the books, please?
Yes, I printed all of these for you. That is the extent of the engagement. All of that.
All right.
Marked for your attention.
Thank you very much.
All our proposals are in there, and we can talk about that.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
All right.
We're still here on the point of view, and on this segment, we're going to look at the role of faith, the church community in this crusade to stop Galamsey. Now, I'm sure you've seen a few videos that have been circulating where either a preacher in a church condemns Galamsey, or some of the Christian groups have sent statements standing up against Galamsey. Some people feel that the church can do a whole lot more if we are to be successful with this fight. So I've invited a theologian in whom I am well pleased. Interviewed him a few months back on his book, Stand Up for the Gospel, Getting the Church Back on Track. A Ghanaian who's now domiciled in Kenya, Reverend Canon Dr. Emmanuel Kwesi Amoafo. He's back in town, and I caught up with him to say, look, this Galamsey issue, what are we supposed to do? Rev, welcome back to Ghana.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Good.
Great. Have you been following the Galamsey story in Ghana?
I have.
Wow.
With a great deal of concern, actually, yeah.
How closely have you been following, and what are your general thoughts around what's happening?
Well, you know, Ghana used to be called the Gold Coast.
All right.
That's because in this country, God has blessed us with gold. In all over the country, north, south, east, west, there's gold everywhere. And the gold that is in the country should benefit the people of this country. It should contribute to the well-being of Ghanaians. Now, Ghanaians may, at this point, at least your ordinary man in your small town village across the country, may not feel as though they are beneficiaries of the resource, the gold resource. And when you look at the current state of the economy, with a lot of young people unemployed, a lot of anguish, desperation, people trying to flee the country, the thinking, I guess, is, look, we have this resource. Why don't we, if the government is not going to empower us through this resource, we will empower ourselves. So I think behind the rush, the gold rush, let me call it that, is that thinking. So to me, or my view, is that the government should, number one, regulate that sector. Number two, empower the communities with intermediate technology. There are small-scale equipment that you can use for gold extraction, which do not destroy the environment, which do not include the use of mercury to pollute waterways and so on. There is technology like that. If the government would invest in that technology, give it to the communities, and then create, you know how we have the Ghana Cocoa Marketing Board? If they would create the Ghana Gold Marketing Board, for example, the government would then purchase all the gold that is produced from these community artisanal mining, which will be mined with the equipment the government has provided. And the difference between what the government will sell the gold for and what they buy it from the people, just like with cocoa, can be used to finance that equipment that the government has given to the communities. So you'll have a win-win situation. You'll have communities that are empowered to benefit from the natural resource of gold, and you'll have communities that are doing so in ways that do not damage the economy. They will be contributing to the economy. The government will be providing sustainable skills and employment for the people. But to just leave it like this, for the people themselves to go out and try and figure it out with mercury and all the poisonous ways in which it's being done, I think it's something that, talking about the church, I think the church needs to really stand up as a body that would engage actively with the government to say, listen, there's nothing wrong with gold extraction, but get involved as a government. Help the people to do it in ways that do not create the damage to the environment that we're currently seeing.
To be fair to the church, there have been statements. So, for example, the Catholic Bishops' Conference have been consistent, asking for the government to declare state of emergency, suspend mining, and do all of that. We had a letter written by 19 so-called apostolic fathers who also issued a very strong statement. Then we've had, in fact, sat in the chair that you're sitting in a few weeks ago was a pastor, a friar from the Western region who's mobilized the community against Galamsey. So we've seen various efforts, but some people feel like there's a certain tolerance for the destruction of the environment because of the mindset of Ghanaians. And the view is that, look, 71% of Ghanaians say they are Christians. If they are really well-schooled in environmental stewardship, there should be a more forceful response to the problem from even the communities. So there seems to be a view around maybe that the theology of Ghanaians around the environment is not that strong. I don't know where you stand on that.
That is one view, but Bernard, don't forget that the hungry man is an angry man. A man who is hungry will put his morality aside and look for food. He will steal. You see, so if you're talking about people in very desperate economic, financial conditions, they may have a good theology about the environment, but if they feel as though this is the only means by which I can make a living or I can acquire some capital, trust me, they will put they'll put their theology aside and do it. When we are in Christ, we're now a new creation. We now join God in his effort to restore to us the godly management of the environment, which was the original mandate given to us.
But even on the point of survival, again, should if your water is destroyed,
yes,
that you don't have water to drink, right? So I mean, maybe this is not even a theological. Maybe this is more ethics, right?
Yes.
If you have money from gold and you have to buy water or import it, and the water you drink or depend on is destroyed, you're destroying your own survival.
Absolutely.
So I feel like it's more a certain warped mindset of people. You've dealt with the enforcement side, but I feel like the value system of somebody who thinks that if I get money and therefore I'm hungry, so I need to eat. So therefore, if I destroy cocoa farms or river bodies, some of these things would last for 100 years.
Yes.
I feel like maybe there's more a problem of ethics. People don't have a proper value system. It's not nothing even about their theology. It's like the way they assess things.
Yes, it's faulty.
Yes, that's
it's
how
faulty.
I see it, right?
But this is why we have government. Government is supposed to regulate. You see, when you're driving, you have traffic lights. You imagine a country, a city without traffic lights, without any regulation. Everybody's driving the way they want. Think of the accidents. Think of the chaos. So you have the rule, the rule of law. So you have this governmental body that steps in and says, now wait a minute, we need traffic lights because people are killing themselves on the roads. So you put traffic lights, you put this, you put laws in place, traffic regulations to regulate the traffic. Same with the environment. It's the responsibility of a government to say, because people will have that attitude where ethics, there's warped ethics or a lack of ethics. Therefore, the government had to step in to regulate and say, yes, we're not outlawing mining, but we're going to regulate it so it does not lead to the destruction of the water bodies.
Should the church be more forceful in its position? Yes, there have been statements. Should the church be more aggressive in protecting the environment?
Absolutely, I would say that. And they should do it in two ways. First, from the pulpit, as you said, teaching the people, the ordinary man on the street, the importance of our God-given mandate to steward the environment in a godly way. And then, secondly, engaging actively with the government. Because the government takes the church seriously. Let's especially in a country like Ghana, where everybody virtually goes to church, the government seeking votes from the public know that the people listen to the church. So the government should actively engage with the government and say, listen, we think this thing needs to be regulated this way. They need to also provide alternatives. If you just tell the government, regulate it.
Yeah. Could the problem be the fact that the church leadership is divided along political lines? Some people feel like the reason the church's voice in politics generally and then in society on this particular issue is weak is that there are people who take sides. And so the church as a bloc
is seen to be divided.
Yes, as against in certain countries where they tend to vote on specific issues en bloc. That doesn't seem to be the case here.
That could be a good point. And I think that for me that's again a failure of theology, because in Matthew 5:13-16, God has called his people to be the salt and the light of the earth. What does light do? Light confronts darkness. Light dispels darkness. Where there's light, corruption and all these things are exposed, you see. So if the church is so divided that it cannot play that role of being the salt and the light, that's a failure of theology.
Because as I speak to you now, the opposition leader will meet church leaders on Tuesday, right? And I'm sure the governing party candidate at some point will meet them or has met them. There's a view that now the Christian group is essentially split along NDC and NPP lines, and therefore, in effect, last couple of days there were protests in Accra, and they feel like because of the numbers that we have, beyond praying, which is great, they should also hit the streets. They should let people know more forcefully the position is. Do you advocate for that? They point to Latin America and they talk about how in certain countries, they use the power of the pulpit and also the power of mobilization to get political leaders to change things. Is
Yes.
that something you advocate for?
Well, I wouldn't throw that out, but I would place more emphasis on directly appealing to the Lord as a united church. It doesn't matter what denomination you are, whether a Pentecostal or mainline denomination or whatever. The church organizing prayer and saying, Lord, we're coming to you at this critical time in the history of our nation. We are crying out to you, number one, to avert violence and bloodshed, discord, and so on. And number two, that you give us the leader of your choice. You give us the leader of your choice. You know, in Proverbs, Proverbs chapter 21, verse 1, it says, the king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. The president, the government, are they bigger or above God? No, they're not. They are in God's hands. And as God's people appeal to God, look up to God, God will intervene in ways that will surprise you. In ways that will surprise you. So yes, I will not say don't demonstrate. I will not say don't speak from the pulpit. But I will say, even as you do that, place a lot more emphasis on organized prayer for the country by the churches.
By the way, how was it like in Kenya when the protests were going on? Were you there whilst it was
Yes,
happening?
I was.
How did it look was it as dangerous as it looked?
Well,
on the set?
it was a disturbing time. The young people are very angry. They stood up to the government and said, no, you're not passing this tax. We're not going to allow it. And of course, the older people, their parents and so on, were supporting them in the wings, you see. And the effect was seen by everybody. Yes, the government, at least the police, in some instances, responded with more force, more violence than was necessary, and people lost their lives. But in the end, the tax was shelved. The president stood up and said, I concede. So there are times, I believe, when something like that is called for. And of course, the church, I know, being in the church there, I know the church was very firmly behind the efforts of the young people. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk to you again soon on some other things you're doing in relation to the book you've written, and also in the year 2025, some big events. By the way, if you want a copy of his book, we'll put the address on the screen. Stand Up for the Gospel, Getting the Church Back on Track. A very insightful exposition on the book of Jude and getting the right message across. But we've been talking to Reverend Canon Dr. Amoafu on the issue of environmental stewardship, Galamsey, and also on the church's role as the election comes to a head. Thanks for watching tonight's edition of the show. In our first part, we spoke to lawyer Ankomah, who's been breaking down the legal dimensions of the Galamsey problem. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Welcome.